Alright, after listening to an introductory song to loosen me up, I think I'm a bit more prepared. But it's hard to report exactly what's going on in your head, as it's happening, as you're thinking. But that's kind of the goal of what I want to do. I'm recording myself drawing, and I know that there is a kind of conversation happening with myself, between me and myself, whenever I'm drawing, decisions I'm making, and hopes, and kind of you have these aspirations while you're drawing, what you want to achieve. Not in terms of the result of the drawing, but more, how do you want to feel? I want to get a specific feeling, which is what pretty much drives me to draw in the first place. I want to be in a certain kind of place, which I've learned to love to be in over the years. And I've been drawing since I was a kid. And drawing was often, definitely an escapism. I was creating worlds that I wanted to be in, as I'm doing right now. A lot of my drawings are really detailed, so it's kind of layering little pieces together as I go along. And it turns into a map, kind of map of my trying to figure out this space, which is the white page, right? I was just talking to somebody yesterday about this, about how I love, sometimes it's a little bit scary as well, but I love the white page, like just what you might call the blank page. Because to somebody who likes to draw, it's not representative of emptiness, it's more like a potential, like what fresh land might be to a farmer, I guess, like untouched, fresh, fertile land, because it's a place for discovery, and it's not empty, it's full of, potential. But what's interesting about potential is that, in fact, it is empty, something which only has potential doesn't have what you hope it to have yet, it's latent, it's waiting to get something, to be not filled, but to grow into something. And then when the drawing is done, you've got something, in a sense, on there. It's not as if you filled it, the white space, but rather you pulled out of it what was already supposed to be there, kind of. So you didn't come here and imprint something on an empty space, you came and discovered the potential of the white page. So when I'm here, I'm exploring, and you can't, I don't feel like I can do that in big movements, I feel I'm very careful. That's probably the reason why there is detail, because I want every mark to not burden me in my decisions. I want each tiny mark to open up new possibilities, like branches. So my method is all about branching out, constantly opening new tunnels. As I'm doing now, I'm making these small branches, which later will inform me what next mark I can make. And all the marks are embedded with meaning, so each mark is burdened. But if they're small, and if they stretch out like branches, then they are perhaps opening possibilities. And indeed, when I stand back and look, I'm often surprised, because I certainly didn't plan the composition. It's growing incrementally. And a lot of my drawings look like fungus. some kind of microscopic growth, because that's how they're actually growing, incrementally. And I guess, I'm finding it hard to put into words now, but I think it's a kind of evolution I'm creating, Literally, the branches are choices. The branches I'm making, are possible futures. So here I'm drawing a line, and it's extending out of a more solid object into the white space. And I do a little bit of almost arbitrary shadowing to give me an idea of the future three-dimensional shape that will appear there. So, and these branches, I may leave and then come back to later and see how they relate to other branches around which are reaching out to meet them. So, futures of all these origins are coinciding. So I start something here, but I know that even though I'm starting here, the futures of this root, we can call it, and this root, they're going to intertwine. And that's always interesting when that happens. There is a certain freedom in starting in the white space, moving away from the composition and starting in a white space, for instance here. It's like, the initial mark is a kind of admiration of the medium itself. So you can see what kind of world I'm talking about, what kind of place I want to be in. So I'll talk you through it. I've got these things, and I must apologize because it's quite hard for me to talk about it. I can't find the words. This is the first time I'm speaking from my mind as I'm drawing. And these are ears, like bunny rabbit ears. And they are also a little bit like wings, like insect wings. I find them very nice to draw because after I've been absorbed in some details, it's quite liberating to make one single long line. And as I make that line, it's crucial to stay focused, not in terms of staying neat or staying precise. That's not what I have in mind. But I want to feel the mass of the thing I'm drawing. So it's an ear, and I really want to feel the earness of it when I'm making it. So I'm throughout drawing this whole line, I'm thinking about the mass that is encompassed in my line. Likewise, I do it here, and I have another set here. And now I'm going to start to draw. One thing you can notice is that there are two conflicting inks. So I got a blue one, which I'm drawing with this nib. Quite a diluted ink, quite cheap. The other one is a gel pen in this maroon color. And as I mentioned, both, every drawing is kind of like fungus growing because of the possibilities I want to allow myself by making these incremental decisions. I want it to be as open as possible, the future of my drawing, and to be guided by it rather than, mastering the lines to form a composition. And it's kind of like a growing organic substance all over the page. And interestingly, the red one and the blue one, they are kind of competing, like two different species. So with the red one, I comfortably draw on top of the blue lines, knowing that the red lines follow their own laws, their own logic. And the blue lines follow their own logic too. And when they interfere, it's a loose kind of relationship. Sometimes the red lines cooperate with the blue lines. Like here, I'm making creases in the sausage-like shape left over by the blue line using my red line. But I may decide to disrupt the logic of the previous line. Here there are a lot of blue lines. There's a very clear kind of logic here. Borrowing a lot of language from comic books, perhaps. There's a lot of hairs and tendrils flying out and interweaving. But maybe my red line doesn't want to fly out along with the blue tendrils, but wants to grow as if upon a glass plane over the blue drawing. So disregards it almost. Never entirely disregards it. They are still part of the same universe. They may follow different ideologies. And the red line is gonna swarm over. Now, the red line starts to obey and begins to interweave into the blue ones. And I'm enjoying that, the kind of tension between the two colors. The difference in the color allows them to be immediately identifiable as two different logics to visually, to the eye. And that allows me to be in two different mindsets. Now, I haven't come to the felt tip yet, but we'll get there. It's no rocket science. As soon as I see there is a bit too much dominant blue areas, I come in and invade with the red. I disrupt the logic that has settled here. Sometimes I feel the movements in the wrist. Sometimes I make the decision of how large I want to go. Right now I want to be quite small, quite lost in this very small scale. I'm thinking of something hairy, something quite dense and hairy, which I think this red line enjoys creating. I think it enjoys hairy stubbliness. And I let my thought processes accelerate to the point of pure instinct. That doesn't sound like it is a real thing, does it? Pure instinct. It doesn't sound like that really exists, but I can feel it now. Right now in my wrist I can feel a very old habit just taking place and solidifying, strengthening. It's hairy, but I'm also not getting carried away, so I'm looping the hairs back in to create an interweaving of strings. And something has started to grow here. I can see it's quite dominantly red. And I don't want it to be too solid, so I leave a space. And I'm thinking again about the principle of branching out you know, so I'm laying out almost seeds, you know, fertilizing the area. I'm interested now in this mustard yellow that I put a long time ago. I love the shock of this red languid ink on top of that predetermined color, pre-chosen color. It's just settled here. I like the shock of how I expect the relationship of the ink with a white default background, but then when I touch the yellow, something new happens. The red line is somehow popping. Okay. I'm going to go back to blue because I like dipping the nib into, and I immediately started here, you see. I'm enjoying the difference in the feeling of the tools themselves. Look, I can't help resisting to infiltrate the red with my blue. But I'm being quite obedient here. I'm fitting the blue into the gaps of the red and making another weave of double lines. I often operate in double lines. Let me show you what I mean. Like this. It's an implied three-dimensionality and also captures a margin of error. Whatever error means, you know. You just feel it somehow when something is wrong. But doing double lines like this adds a sketch language, and sketching is a kind of drawing which allows for error. Like an essay. Essay in French means to try. So that's what this is, an essay. I'm trying. It's an attempt. So, but what am I actually doing here? Now I'm occasionally, it's quite, you know, simple actually, what I'm doing. Half of it seems to be, you know, these string-like things. So the double lines, double line there, I just made one double line. And now I'm instinctively making a weave again. I think one of the reasons I like weaves is because I like spines. Now, when I weave this through, it's almost like adding a spine to a caterpillar, you know. And I like spines because I think they're such primitive sort of organic mechanisms. So I wanted to show you this mature part and this, very early part too. But one thing I'm jealous of when I look at this area are the kind of bolder felt tip colors, and it makes me feel quite jealous in this area. It feels bare. I'm very shaky with colors, but let's give it a try. Oh, just settle myself in. Okay. Let me look. Well, one color which quite excites me is this sort of turquoise blue. These are Faber-Castell and felt pens. And this one's called Cobalt Turquoise. I really like this one. I've used it in a few other areas in very small amounts. And I'm excited about it because it's a little bit off this ink I'm using. And it's so saturated that it sort of pops. Now I'm not quite sure what my rule is for my use of color. I'm not even sure how to apply it, but it seems in general I'm following the lines, almost shading them, typical comic book sort of highlighting. And I'm very inexperienced with with color and, using it for any purpose other than making lines. I'm really just a line kind of girl. And so I'm waiting for information. One of the things that excites me is when I draw that blue over the previous lines I made and the way it highlights them, without obstructing the line beneath. So I'm very carefully adding it because I'm not sure what it does, What does this color actually do? It certainly excites me, but it's like, a suspicion of a new tool, of a new technology, I'm kind of suspicious about it. I also like, as I just did, using the flat, using the pen in a flat way to highlight. But it also has a very fine tip for fine lines. So I can imitate the way I'm using the nib with this color and create independent lines. Not only shading, but adding small little additional conflicting logics. Here I'm loosely following the red. And maybe I'll add some spots. It's a kind of shading technique, but I also like the idea of flying vagabonds just without purpose. Let's see. So, here I did something interesting, to me at least. I used this one pen. I believe it was this very pale grey that you can barely see when you touch the page with it. You can see it, but it's very faint. And basically I just used its wetness to spread the ink of my red and blue lines and use that to bruise, use the very color of the ink to bruise the white surrounding spaces. This adds a three-dimensional kind of quality, but I'm not too interested in depicting perfect three-dimensional shapes, although it is important to me, as I mentioned earlier, this feeling of mass, whenever I'm thinking about three-dimensionality, it's because I'm actually interested in feeling the mass almost in my very hand, feeling the mass, feeling this thing materialize in my hand, So I'm bruising using this pen. I'm still not sure if that's a good idea, but I'm trying it and seeing where it takes me. Let's go back to actual colors. Now that I look back here, I'm actually quite excited by what I'm seeing, about how the lines are making previous lines pop. This is a very appealing color to me. I think I'm going to be brave and almost color this whole circle kind of loosely. I'm leaving the white spaces, again, a language borrowed from comic books. But now I'm using this pen to weave lines into the kind of, into this structure. So I'll leave residue of this turquoise color throughout this structure. Here I'm overlapping a previously added felt color. Okay. I'm not sure if I like what I did there. I'm going to actually cover some of those white spaces. Yep. Let me try return to this mustard yellow, which is the dominant color I've been spreading around. I found an interesting complementary color to it. This kind of toxic yellow, what do they call it? Dark chrome yellow. And I've called this mustard yellow, but it's actually green gold. So let's add the green gold. It's kind of complementary. These colors are what I think of in my head as ancient Egyptian colors. This green gold and this cobalt turquoise. I don't know why, maybe it's because of those stereotypical images of Cleopatra, where she has that kind of gold and a kind of turquoise blue, just like this one on her outfit. You know, thinking about Elizabeth Taylor's role, maybe. Her outfit, her costume. Again, look, I'm using this as a way to highlight, sort of. But if I look back here, I was also interested in using the colors, not just to highlight lines, but to accentuate, actually, spaces. So there's obviously a big space here, but I'm not going to color all of it in felt. If I find a smaller space, a hole somewhere, there is a kind of hole in here, for instance. Now adding this yellow has made this part of the drawing more stringy, so they appear much more like strings, because this yellow can be read as a void. So adding that in there. And now this yellow color is acquiring that meaning of the background or the void space. So if I consistently use it in that manner, that's what meaning that this color will acquire.
Ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class, ain't got no skirts, ain't got no sweaters, ain't got no perfume, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith. I ain't got no culture, ain't got no mother, ain't got no father, ain't got no brother, ain't got no children, ain't got no aunts, ain't got no uncles, ain't got no love, ain't got no mind. got my